Towards the end of my first year at high school, the headmaster, Mr. Stratton, was arrested. Rumours ranged from drug offences to other, more inappropriate affairs, but it was something the other teachers refused to comment on. Local authorities decided that when the year ended, we were to merge with another school in the area. The school lay derelict for some time since, and in the summer before university, it was announced that the building was to be demolished to make way for new housing. Hoping for a rush of nostalgia, and knowing it was our last chance, me and a couple of mates, Adam and Riggsy, planned a last hurrah before the wrecking ball struck. We mentally cleared the overgrown vines and wild grass, catching glimpses of our youth as we traversed the decaying relic. We tried a couple of doors, hoping for easy access, but not wanting to break in, we resigned ourselves to the old courtyard where we used to hang out on break, feeling like mischievous children as we supped on our beer. Adam started chucking small rocks against the window. After downing his third beer in as many minutes, Riggsy threw his bottle to the ground, the shattering of the glass sparking an idea in his immature mind. "Nah, mate, this is how it's done," he boasted. He picked up a brick from the ground and launched it straight through the window. I sighed. I didn't approve of such infantile behaviour, but with a demolition impending, there was little worry about facing criminal damage charges. "Come on, give me a leg up," Riggsy ordered as he pulled out any shards that may obstruct his entry. I rolled my eyes as me and Adam cupped our hands together in a basket, offering a platform for Riggsy's feet to propel him up, allowing him to climb through the frame. "See anything?" Adam shouted, but there was no reply. We exchanged a worried look, and then heard a click. The door to the hallway creaked open. Satisfied that we could now safely enter, we ventured inside. Surveying the remnants of our childhood, Riggsy remained out of sight, though it was clear we weren't the first urban exploration party. We left him to his own devices and checked out the classroom closest to us. Images and a timeline of events from World War II, bordered by wavy paper, were now spray-painted over with offensive, yet historically appropriate graffiti, but it wasn't too dissimilar to how I remembered it. The English classroom next door offered the same trope. We peered through the door, but there wasn't anything exciting on display, so we moved on to the science lab. Upon entering, Adam immediately advanced to the life-size skeleton model to place it in an uncompromising position. There were 3 long desks in the lab stretching across the whole room. I was drawn to one section of the near desk, free from the debris of its surroundings like someone had recently cleaned the surface. There was a Bunsen burner set up, and I don't know if there was still a gas connection, but empty cans of beans and chili were scattered around. It looked like someone had been using the area as a kitchen. It was definitely time to go. We returned to the hallway to resume the search for Riggsy, but was instead greeted with the ominous sound of rubber hitting the floor. I felt each pound vibrate my bones. Like a scene from a horror film, a solitary basketball rolled pretentiously towards us, stopping dead at my feet. Adam picked it up. "Riggsy!" he shouted in whisper as he advanced towards the gym where it had escaped from. I just wanted to get out of there, but I reluctantly followed him. The gym had an equipment closet on the side wall. The door was open, and its contents spilled out all over the floor. Inside was a cage made up from elasticated wires where the balls were kept. Adam skipped over to return the basketball, but stopped dead in his tracks. The air rushed out of his lungs as he gasped. I moved over to him to see what had petrified him. There in the cage, amidst the rest of the balls, a pair of eyes glowed in the darkness. It appeared Riggsy was hiding from us, a juvenile attempt to scare his friends. Unwilling to play along, I took the ball from Adam and launched it forcefully towards the cage. Upon hearing his painful groans, me and Adam almost fell to the floor in hysterics. During the laughing fit, I felt my phone vibrate and nonchalantly reached into my pocket to check. It was a text from Riggsy. "Hey, where you guys at?" it read. It was now me that froze. Adam asked what was wrong, and unable to speak, I held my phone up for him to read. We both looked over to the cage. Balls started popping out between the wires as a bearded man began to rise up. Fearing he may be seeking vengeance, both from disturbing him in his dwelling and subsequently attacking him with a basketball, we ran. We ran straight back down the hallway and out into the courtyard where Riggsy was waiting for us. The gym was dark, and I couldn't make out any detailed features of the man, but I'm almost certain it was Mr. Stratton, the disgraced former headmaster. Aside from friends, we didn't tell the story to anyone with any authority. As far as we knew, we were just as guilty. Demolition began a couple of weeks after that, eradicating all glimpses of a happy childhood and the traumatizing events of that night. I can't help but wonder what became of Mr. Stratton. I pray he wasn't buried amongst the rubble, but did he even know about the plans for the building? For him and for us, school was out forever. Every day after work in the city, I'd hurry through the station to catch the train back to my town, passing the blocked-off entrance to the old tunnels that were closed when the lines became electrified. The time from finishing work and the train home was narrow, so I'd always rush past, knowing that there would be an hour of waiting if I missed it. Occasionally, I would though, and to pass the time I'd go exploring the historic station. There were a couple of bricks missing from the old arch, allowing a view into a forgotten relic, and I was always intrigued by what was hidden behind. One day after finishing late, I noticed the wall had been removed. I think my subconscious mind hoped I would miss the train that night as I slowed my pace to take a peek. Hearing the train doors close and the chug as it rode away, I knew I had a whole hour of exploration before the next one would arrive. I glanced around, making sure the coast was clear, but as there were no signs telling me not to enter, and no one guarding the area, my curiosity prevailed and I ventured into the abandoned section. As I advanced further into the dimly lit corridors, the air grew colder and a sense of foreboding settled over me. It was about as creepy as you'd expect. Rats scuttled over the dusty platforms as the light reached its climax. I took out my phone to examine the vintage posters on the wall, but they had mostly deteriorated to the point where nothing was legible. I stumbled upon a dark alcove, and there, lying motionless on the cold ground, was a woman. Her head was propped up against the old stone wall, protruding unkempt hair that covered her face. A pile of discarded needles surrounded her, offering an easy explanation to her situation. Her eyes were wide open, but she remained unfazed when a rat crawled over her leg. "Hey, are you okay?" I asked cautiously, my concern overcoming any trepidation. It was met with no response. I feared the worst. My fingers trembled as I audaciously reached forward to check her pulse, but before I made contact, she stirred. I fell backwards, startled by her movement. Our eyes locked for a moment until the distant rumble of an oncoming train distracted me. The lights beamed in our direction. "Come on," I ordered, panicking. I grabbed hold of her arm to pull her up, but she shook me off. She shot to her feet on her own volition and moved to the center of the track, poised as if ready to tackle me. "We need to get out of," I started, but she cut me off with a horrific moan like the wail of the walking dead. Valuing my own life above the lost soul of an addict, I pressed myself against the damp wall as the train whirled past, shutting my eyes tight to shield me from witnessing the calamity. As the engine faded into obscurity, I opened one eye slowly, followed by the other. I saw nothing. Flashing my phone in all directions, there was no blood and no mutilated body, just me, frantically staggering on the buzzing tracks, dazed by my confusion. And then, another light hit. I closed my eyes again, almost accepting my fate without the resolve to take cover once more. As I awaited the impending collision, there was a voice. "You shouldn't be down here, sir," it said. Opening my eyes again, there was a uniformed man, a worker from the station, stood in front of me. I took a moment to compose myself before telling him about the woman and the train. He looked down at the stack of discarded needles by my feet and cocked a half smile. "Okay, sir," he chuckled. "She was right here," I demanded, knowing that the more I spoke, the less he believed me. "No trains come through here," he said confidently. My blood ran cold. "No, but there was... You can't be down here," he insisted, shooing me away like I was just another rat. I shook my head. There was no use arguing with someone who refused to listen. I followed the light of his torch back down the abandoned platform and returned to the bustling station, parking myself on a bench. As I awaited my train home, I tried reflecting on the events, but none of it made any sense. I had become the Loco in Loco-motive. I wouldn't really call myself an urban explorer, but I do a lot of walking, and if I ever discover somewhere at least moderately interesting that's easily accessible, I find myself wandering in. There's an old mill town a few miles from where I live, a relic of the Industrial Revolution now reclaimed by nature. There's a plethora of factories dotted around, most are ruins with just remnants of former walls, but there are a couple that remain standing, although were abandoned decades ago. There's one mill in particular that's always fascinated me, with a river emerging from either side. Steam was the main source of power in its heyday, so presumably the river fed into some kind of generator. I'm far from an expert on the subject, but I've always wanted to check out the mechanics. There's a footpath that runs alongside. I think it used to be a rail track, but now it's just a scenic route for dog walkers. One day, I stopped there to immerse myself in the beauty of the area, leaning over the rail that separates the path from the stream while I finished my cigarette. Looking down, I saw a small canoe appearing from the tunnel under the mill. There was a rope attached to the front with a man walking along the bank, pulling the vessel along. I tilted my head to the side. He looked up at me and I gave a little nod, which he responded to with a longer nod of his own. I'd always just assumed there'd be a gate or something in the tunnel to prevent access, as the rest of the building was pretty heavily boarded, but it seemed I'd finally found an entry point. I waited a couple of minutes until the man was out of sight, and then casually flicked my cigarette before leapfrogging over the barrier. I clambered down the bank, loosely gripping strands of grass to maintain balance, and veered into the tunnel. There was a thin strip along the side, a towpath that had hitherto escaped my notice. I grinned in excitement and ventured in. It was dark. I sidestepped along the damp wall towards the light at the other end, expecting to emerge at the opposite side of the mill. Instead, it brought me to a stairwell. Naturally, I headed up to explore the dilapidated building. There were various rooms with skeletal structures, old mechanisms whose main components had been stripped. For the life of me, I couldn't work out what anything was or what was produced here, but I could hear faint rumbling of machines and murmured voices like the ghosts of former workers. Peering through an archway to the main workshop, I saw them. An operation in full swing. It appeared as though the factory was very much alive, and I'll be honest, there was a moment where I did consider the place was haunted. As my eyes adjusted to the dusty environment, I noticed them bundling packages into a crate. The reality of the situation sank in. I'd uncovered a drugs operation. I had absolutely no intention of investigating any further. I crept back down the stairs to make a quiet exit, where a soft whistling began echoing through the tunnel. Another ghost, perhaps. I deliberated for a moment until the front tip of the canoe I saw earlier returned. I was very much stuck between a rock and a hard place. Back up the stairs I went. On the ground floor, the stone steps turned to steel, and hoping to find a place to hide, I tiptoed up. It led me to a higher level of the main workshop. There was a metal platform overlooking the ground floor that stretched to the other end of the building, with what appeared to be a prefabricated office at the end. As I snuck across, there must have been a loose bolt or something in my way. Whatever the object, I accidentally kicked it, launching it below where it connected with the worker's head. The worker flapped his hand, silencing those around him. "There's someone there," he announced as he looked directly at me. Everybody scrabbled into their pockets, adorning themselves in balaclavas. I'd already seen their faces, but it now felt like a uniformed army was against me, heightening my fear. I pulled out my phone, calling the police as I raced towards the office. There was a lock in the office, but the police told me to barricade the door as best I could. As footsteps hurtled towards me, I took the advice given to me, pushing up an old desk and a rusted filing cabinet against the door. The handle started to rattle. I cowered into the fetal position, covering my ears in an attempt to drown out the incessant banging. After what felt like an eternity, it stopped. I heard the sound of footsteps shrinking as if they were in retreat. I remained in the office for about half an hour after that, eventually summoning the courage to attempt an escape. I opened the door and peered my head out to make sure the coast was clear. With no one in sight, I stepped out onto the platform. Looking down into the factory, there was no one there. All the packages were gone, and so were the people. I wasted no time getting out of there, darting across the platform and back down the steps. I slid back down the tunnel until daylight reached my eyes, offering some hope. As soon as I made it outside, someone gripped me from behind, tackling me to the ground. Looking up, I saw the canoe. Beside it, lay down on the banking, 4 men in a similar position to me. My arms were forced behind my back and I heard a click. I had been handcuffed. Despite the precarious situation, I let out a sigh of relief when I realized I'd been arrested. It was a scary but welcome outcome. I was immediately released when I told them it was me who made the call. I was still taken to the station alongside the rest of the men, but thankfully didn't have to ride in the same van as them. The only worry is, whilst I'm certain they're going to do time, I saw their faces, and they saw mine. Who knows what connections they have?